Here we go. Welcome to the beginning of the Doctor Who marathon, going all the way back to November 1963. Getting started again is always really exciting. If you haven't ever seen how Doctor Who started, then it's something I thoroughly recommend doing. There's been so much Doctor Who by now that it can be divided into wildly different eras, either by lead actor, by producer, by script editor, or even by which job John Nathan Turner happened to be doing at the time. This will take ages. I guess that so much Doctor Who exists now as past tense that it's really easy to just grow accustomed to one particular flavour of the show. You know, base under siege and onion, and sea salt and cracked black pertwee, fish and chibnalls, McCoys. If someone is used to Doctor Who being done in one specific way, then going back to its very first story can sometimes be a bit of a jolt. Even with familiarity of An Unearthly Child, which is a title that I use for all 4 episodes by the way, it still has a stark quality. The atmospheric opening of both the remarkable title sequence and the fantastic theme tune continuing to play over the policeman wandering through the fog kick off 60 years of something really unique. Keep watching is what it says. The introductions to our heroes, because they're very definitively not framed as companions at the beginning, the 4 are more like an ensemble. The introductions to those are very effective as well. Ian Chesterton and Barbara Wright are instantly likeable. I might even say lovable. William Russell and Jacqueline Hill are brilliant at being our eyes and our ears, our way into the story. They ground this brilliant madness in such a way that we, you and me, are still watching this show to this very day. I know that not all fans are keen on Susan, but she has her part to play as well, and I'm actually quite fond of Susan. That very first episode is named after her, after all, which is something that will happen to Rose when the show comes back. Now, she's set up as quite the intriguing student, which is why Ian and Barbara both have their curiosity piqued. Now, they might go about it in a way that hasn't particularly aged very well, but it's definitely set up as them feeling very strongly that they have a duty of care. At one point she makes a mistake about Britain having the decimal system. It didn't at that point, but she thought that it did. And that doesn't just serve as like a nice character point about her being this sort of like mercurial presence within the school, but it also sort of like enhances the mystery behind her and her as yet unseen grandfather. It's a nice bit of foreshadowing basically that very economically sets out the show's stall while it's introducing its lead characters. Keep watching is what it says. Ian also asks her in one of the classes, like, what does she suppose then the 5th dimension is, if she's insisting that there is one, and she quietly replies, space.
Space?
And that always makes me smile. It's a great moment which Carol Ann Ford nails. It's worth pointing out, by the way, and I will talk more about Susan in subsequent videos as the marathon goes on, that if Susan comes to not be particularly well served as a character, Carol Ann Ford is brilliant as her. When she's given interesting things to do, she more than rises to the challenge. And Susan's quite a tricky character to get right as an actor in this story, I think, because she has to be unsettling, but not as a character enough that we get put off by her. She has to be other, but also relatable. She's the halfway point between Ian and Barbara, who are our way into the story, and her gruff, exclusionary grandfather. So she has to sort of like sit in that. She has to be an inviting presence, but also an unsettling one. And I think Carol Ann Ford does that far better than is spoken about. And from the moment it's discovered in the junkyard, the TARDIS, what a presence. Like, excellent, it's so stylish. The choice of a police box for the ship is inspired. The idea that the TARDIS should change but doesn't is obviously well known, but I honestly think that if they hadn't chosen something as incongruously, Britishly, anachronistically minimalist as the police box, at some point in the show's future, the TARDIS would have changed appearance, maybe more than once. But it didn't, because the police box is just it's a genius image. It looks out of place and instantly familiar in whatever setting you put it in, because there is just something beautifully perfect about the police box. It's another example of just like almost casual genius on display within the central tenets of the show really early on. And William Russell delivers the line, "It's alive," so well that it's an idea it never really went away. The TARDIS is more than just a machine. Then there's the Doctor himself. He doesn't get a grand entrance, but then he isn't the hero that he will one day turn out to be just yet. This guy is set up as not just a strange, but also possibly even a malevolent force. The fact that he enters his own show, coughing up a lung into his hanky like some kind of pointed betrayal of Richard III or another Shakespearean rogue, only adds to the air of uncertainty around him. Is he our hero or is he our villain? It's genuinely hard to tell. Keep watching is what it says. The fact that it is genuinely hard to tell is down to a deceptively clever performance from William Hartnell. It's easy to write off a lot of early television because of its limitations. I've been guilty of that in the past as well, but this is genuinely a fantastic screen performance. Retroactively, given what we know about the Doctor now, it's the perfect introduction for him. Shuffling on unassumingly, so could just casually commence 60 years of space and time adventuring. That's our Doctor. While he may be quite villainous for all we know at this point, William Hartnell does give him some endearing qualities, brought about by the opportunity they had to be able to reshoot the pilot from the very beginning. Incidentally, I always forget that the pilot is on the DVD. I'm a millennial, I have DVDs. The original pilot, the one that wasn't broadcast, is it's as the first episode, so if you play all, it'll play the pilot and then the broadcast version of An Unearthly Child, and I always forget that. I'm always pleasantly surprised though, because I'm like, I get to compare the two back to back. And if I'm honest with you, I have a sneaking preference for the pilot, the one that wasn't broadcast. And it is a but. That's not to say that Hartnell doesn't nail it in the reshot version, because he does. He is undeniably harsher in the original pilot, but if the reshot version is what secured the show's future to the point where we're still eagerly awaiting new episodes to this day, then I am more than glad that they merited that reshoot. There's like a few moments that I just absolutely love. Because Ian says, "You're going to come with us while we find a policeman," and the Doctor's like, "Oh, am I?" It's delivered wonderfully, and then also they cast doubt on the Doctor's character, and he just sort of like mumbles under his breath, insulting.
If you both want to make fools of yourselves, I suggest you do what you said you do. Go and find a policeman.
Or you nip off quietly in the other direction.
Insulting.
It's like perfect. Hartnell wasn't to know that the character he was helping craft here would endure for as long as it has. But he put so much into the character in this first episode that if you actually look hard enough, I think that you can see germs of several of the later Doctors in there. It's far from a broad performance, that's not what I'm saying. In fact, actually, in his first scene, it's quite internalised and inward, but he puts so much variety into the performance. And then the inside of the TARDIS is revealed for the first time, and it's a fantastic moment. In fact, I think even stacked up against the 3 episodes that follow, that's the defining moment in this story for me, because Hill and Russell play it to perfection. The TARDIS interior and all its different variations, there's something that's very, very easy to get used to, especially as we're going to see a lot of companions react to it as we go on. But here, in the first instance, it's actually really quite effective. The Doctor is given some excellent lines in this scene, and Hartnell is just joyous in it. "I tolerate this century, but I don't enjoy it" is one of my all-time favourite Doctor lines, and that's in a scene where we also get the Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension speech. The script is fantastic. And it's also worth pointing out that up until this point, the Doctor and Susan have been unknowable and framed as maybe even a little bit sinister. But through a tiny few lines and Carol Ann Ford and William Hartnell's performances, we connect with the Doctor and Susan really profoundly. And when watched back to back as a whole story, we also get that really evocative watching birds wheel in an alien skyline, which does absolute wonders for opening up the show and showing you what the possibilities could be. It blows it wide open. This show can go anywhere. This show can do anything. Keep watching is what it says. And then we meet the tribe of Gum. Please keep watching is what it says. I'm being facetious. The 3 Caven episodes definitely come in for some flack from certain corners of fandom, but I'm one of their defenders. Yes, they move slowly, and yes, we have a very limited setting over the course of them, and yes, the first episode is so brilliant at setting up the show in such a short space of time that it can feel like a very pronounced change of face, but I still find much to enjoy in it. The prehistoric people's interpretation of things are both endearing and plausible, referring to the TARDIS as a strange tree, misremembering how to make fire, referring to Ash as dead fire. All of that really helps sell the tribe to me as characters. Best of all though is the old woman terrified of fire. "We should live as we have always lived" is a way of thinking that, sadly, it prevails today, doesn't it? She's basically the technophobic old matriarch who thinks her grandchildren spend too much time on their phones. "Kids these days are never off their fire." It's one of the first examples of Doctor Who doing that really brilliant thing of taking the here and now and transplanting it into whatever setting the TARDIS happens to find itself in to further engage the viewer. This is one of my favourite examples of it. It's not a stretch to imagine her further down the line demanding her meat raw while everybody else tucks into their flame-grilled steak because she doesn't want any of that nouvelle cuisine. That is if she didn't cop it at the hands of Cal. Which is another brilliant moment when the Doctor catches out Cal over the murder of the old woman like a time-travelling Columbo.
This knife has no blood on it. I said this knife has no blood on it.
Because the Doctor, he points out that Zar's knife has got no blood on it, so it couldn't possibly be the murder weapon. Cal's excuse that
It is a bad knife. It does not show the things it does.
really sits well with me. What I really like about these early episodes is the dynamic of the four travellers. Throughout the Caveman episodes, we still have the performances of our four leads that pick up from that first episode and continue through, except now they're forced to work together. Thrown together by circumstance, and the actually quite chilling fact that the Doctor abducted Ian and Barbara. It's natural that they don't really trust each other yet, but what I really like about these early episodes is the impact that Ian and Barbara have on the Doctor. The impact of which we're still seeing in the show now. Currently, right now, we're 4 episodes into the marathon, and at this point, probably 3, it happens in this story. At this point, Ian is the hero that the Doctor will one day be. Ian stopping the Doctor from braining the wounded Zar while Barbara tends to him, and the Doctor grumping about it, is the beginnings of quite a meaty character arc. A lot is made of those these days, and if this would be made today, we'd be hit about the head with it and there'd be no subtlety. But here, it plays out sort of almost quietly in the background via some really winning performances. And the Doctor sort of begins to embrace the idea of being the hero of his own show. Here, though, he bears witness. He watches Ian and Barbara in mortal danger, extolling the virtues of kindness and friendship to a cave woman who is utterly perplexed as to why they would even want to help her. So, much later on in the marathon, when the 12th Doctor is talking to the John Sim Master and Missy, 2 incarnations of his best friend and best enemy, and he's talking to them about what it means to be kind, it kind of, to me, comes from Ian and Barbara, and it sounds like them talking. He learnt that from them here. So, 4 episodes in, and I adore these characters. Every time I start a marathon, I never fail to just sort of get sucked straight back in. I love these characters, I fear for their safety, I laugh at their jokes, I worry about their predicament, and I am more than along for the ride. Keep watching is what I say. Highlight is definitely the reveal of the TARDIS interior. It's never been done better on the show since, in my opinion. Not only do I think it's the best it's ever been done on the show, but it also feels like it's the show literally opening up all of its possibilities before our eyes. I've challenged myself to also pick a lowlight for each story. Sometimes that'll be easier than others, but this one, I think when Barbara and Ian are knocked out as the TARDIS takes off at the end of the first episode, I think, well, it's a casualty of having very limited time to get something right, and it looks to me like Ian is just having a little bit of a lie down rather than falling over unconscious. And so, what's the ultimate score for the first story, An Unearthly Child? Four out of 5. It's an absolutely cracking start to a brilliant show. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, you know how YouTube works. Please hit that like button, it helps the channel no end. And what do you think of these first 4 episodes? Are they the perfect beginning to our beloved show, or are they just too different from what it became that you find them a little bit hard going? Are they what you expected, or did they take you completely by surprise? Are your lowlights and highlights the same as mine? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here for the first meeting with the Daleks. And if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang that cloister bell, and I'll meet you on Skaro. Thank you so much again for watching. See you soon.